Welcome the anointed ones. Not all men are born to lead, but some are chosen. There's a reason you've never fit in. A reason why the world feels like a rigged game designed to keep you distracted, tamed, and obedient. And there's a reason why, right now, you feel that itch in your mind, the feeling that something bigger is at play. Here's a fact. Throughout history, the most powerful men weren't the ones who followed the rules. They weren't the ones who begged for permission, chased validation, or lived for applause. No, they were the outliers, the ones who moved in silence, the ones who disrupted everything. And when these men emerged, the world either worshipped them or feared them. And that's exactly why you're here. A powerful organization has marked you, not for mediocrity, not for servitude, but for an elite mission. The police? Oh, they're not chasing criminals, they're chasing anomalies, the men who don't fit the mold, who refuse to be controlled. And you? You're one of them. So buckle up. This isn't just another inspirational talk. This is the brutal truth that most men will never be ready to hear. The question is, are you? Number one, you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to be feared. You were never meant to be just another face in the crowd. The system was designed to mold men into predictable, obedient workers, ones who live quietly, follow orders, and never question why. But then there are the outliers, the ones who can't be tamed, the ones who walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word. If you are one of them, you already know it. From the beginning, you felt different. Maybe it was the way people reacted to you, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with resentment, but rarely with indifference. Weak men wanted you to tone it down, blend in, make yourself smaller so they wouldn't feel threatened. But real power was never meant to hide. The world doesn't fear mediocrity. It doesn't worry about the men who follow trends, who chase approval, who live and die by how others perceive them. Those men are easy to control, but the ones who refuse to kneel, the ones who see the game for what it is and decide they'd rather break the rules than be another pawn, those men are dangerous. And when a man like that rises, the system takes notice. That's why they try to neutralize you before you even realize what you are. They tell you to be realistic. They say your ambitions are too much. They push distractions, temptations, and false comforts in your way, hoping you'll numb yourself into submission. Because here's the truth. The world only truly fears a man who cannot be controlled. And what happens when they can't control you? First, they try to contain you with rules. When that fails, they try to isolate you, to make you doubt yourself. And if that doesn't work, they fear you. Because men like you don't just live life, you command it. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to disrupt, to carve your own path, to be the storm that no one saw coming. And the moment you fully embrace that, everything changes. The world stops looking like something you have to survive and starts looking like something you were meant to conquer. Number two, the strongest predators never roar, they move in silence and strike with precision. Powerful men don't announce themselves, they don't need to. The strongest forces in history weren't the loudest, they were the most calculated. The ones who understood that real dominance isn't about showing off or demanding attention, it's about knowing when to strike and when to disappear. The loudest men are always the easiest to take down. They spend so much time proving they're powerful that they forget to actually be powerful. They want recognition, approval, and applause. And that's exactly what makes them weak. Because the moment you need external validation, you give others control over you. They can manipulate your emotions, predict your moves, and ultimately use your own ego against you. The truly dangerous men, they move in silence. They observe more than they speak. They let people underestimate them because they know that surprise is the ultimate weapon. You'll never see them coming because they don't waste energy trying to be seen. They don't argue with fools, they don't entertain distractions, and they don't react emotionally. And when they do make a move, it's precise, devastating, and impossible to counter. This is how power has always worked. The most successful warriors, leaders, and empire builders understood that a reckless display of strength is a liability. If people know your every thought, your every intention, they can plan against you. But if they have no idea what's going on inside your mind, they live in uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds fear. That's why the men who rule the world don't scream about their dominance. They let their actions speak. They build in the shadows while others waste time flexing for an audience that doesn't matter. And when the time is right, they strike with such force that by the time anyone realizes what happened, it's already too late. This is the difference between real power and performative strength. One commands respect without asking for it. The other begs for attention and calls it authority. Only one of those men survives when the real battle begins. The question is, which one are you? Number 3, your bloodline is not just DNA. It's a code that determines if you rise or fall. Power isn't just something you learn, it's something that's in your blood. Some men are born with it, an unexplainable force that sets them apart. It's not just confidence, intelligence, or strength. It's deeper than that. It's a presence, an energy, a fire that can't be faked. And whether you realize it or not, that fire has been inside you since the beginning. Most men don't have it. They were never meant to. They come from a long line of followers, men who were content with taking orders, fitting in, and avoiding risk. Their blood carries fear, hesitation, and the need for approval. They aren't built to stand alone. They need a system to protect them, a society to tell them what's right, and a group to make them feel safe. That's their nature. But you don't have that weakness. You come from a different breed. The proof has been in your life all along. The way you've always questioned things instead of blindly accepting them. The way you've always been different, standing apart even when you weren't trying to. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to challenge, to create, to destroy, and rebuild. And that's why the world has tried so hard to break you. Weak men are easy to control. Strong men are a threat. But men with power in their blood, they change everything. They don't just survive in the system. They bend it to their will. That's why history remembers warriors, conquerors, and leaders. It's why the masses look up to men who take control, even when they claim to hate them. People instinctively recognize power when they see it. They know deep down who was born to lead and who was meant to follow. You can't fake what's in your blood. You can try to suppress it, try to act like everyone else, but it won't work. That fire will always be there, pushing you to rise above the rest. And when you finally embrace it, when you stop fighting what you were always meant to be, the world won't be able to ignore you anymore. Number 4, they've created a system to neutralize you before you realize who you are. They never wanted you to know your true power. The world is structured in a way that keeps men like you distracted, weakened, and controlled before you even realize who you are. Every system in place, education, entertainment, social norms, even the very definition of success, has been carefully designed to keep you chasing illusions instead of actual power. Because one fully awakened man, a man who sees through the lies, is more dangerous than an entire army of obedient workers. From the moment you were born, they started conditioning you. They told you to sit still, follow instructions, and never question authority. They graded you on compliance, not intelligence. They rewarded obedience, not independence. And when that wasn't enough, they introduced distractions, endless entertainment, mindless consumption, and a culture that glorifies weakness. They told you success meant working yourself to exhaustion for a system that will replace you the second you fall. They made you believe pleasure was purpose, that chasing dopamine through screens, addictions, and meaningless indulgences was the peak of life. Why? Because a man who is constantly chasing comfort will never seek power. A man who is too busy consuming will never create. A man who is drowning in distractions will never have the clarity to see that he is being controlled. The system doesn't fear your body, it fears your mind. Because the second you wake up and see the game for what it is, you become untouchable. That's why they push weak ideologies, telling men to suppress their ambition, their aggression, their drive. They shame power but worship mediocrity. They demonize strength but encourage victimhood, because they know a man who embraces his power cannot be ruled. A man who masters himself becomes impossible to manipulate. And when enough men like that rise, the entire structure collapses. That's why they have to neutralize you before you realize who you are, because if you ever truly understand what you're capable of, you won't just change your own life, you'll change the entire game. And that terrifies them. Number 5, the police don't chase the weak, they chase the uncontrollable. The police don't exist to protect people, they exist to protect the system. If it were just about stopping crime, the biggest criminals wouldn't be the ones in charge. The real purpose of law enforcement isn't to chase down weak men. They pose no threat. It's to keep the uncontrollable ones in line, the ones who refuse to submit. Look at history. Governments have never feared the common man who follows orders, works his job and stays in his lane. They fear the man who questions, who disrupts, who refuses to play by their rules. That's the man they label as dangerous, not because he's a threat to society, but because he's a threat to control. It's not the petty thief or the reckless fool who keeps the system up at night. It's the man who moves differently, who doesn't seek permission, who refuses to be owned. He isn't bound by fake morality, he isn't swayed by propaganda, and he damn sure isn't afraid of consequences. That's the man who forces change, who exposes corruption, who shifts power away from the establishment and into his own hands. And that is unacceptable to those who depend on obedience to keep their grip on the world. That's why they come after the men who think for themselves, the ones who don't rely on the system to survive. The ones who have built their own power outside of the control grid. Because once a man realizes he doesn't need permission to be great, to take what's his, to forge his own path, he becomes a force that can't be stopped. And when enough men like that rise, the system collapses. This is why you were chosen, not to fit in, not to be another cog in the machine, but to disrupt, to carve your own way, to become a walking symbol of what real freedom looks like. And that's why they fear you, because no matter what laws they create, what distractions they throw in your path, what punishments they threaten, you cannot be controlled. And to them, that's the greatest crime of all. Number 6, your isolation wasn't a coincidence, it was training. The world tried to convince you that your isolation was a curse, that the loneliness, the betrayals, and the feeling of being an outsider meant something was wrong with you. But what if it wasn't a punishment? What if it was preparation? Most men are never alone long enough to truly know themselves. They drown in noise, constantly seeking approval, validation, and companionship. They never sit in silence because silence forces them to confront who they really are. But you didn't have that luxury. Life separated you from the masses early, stripping away false friendships, illusions of belonging, and the comfort of being one of them. It was never about punishing you, it was about refining you. Powerful men aren't built in crowds, they aren't shaped by groupthink, by herd mentality, by the constant need to fit in. They are forged in solitude, where distractions are removed, and the mind sharpens itself like a blade against stone. When the world forced you to stand alone, it wasn't cruelty, it was a test. Could you handle the silence? Could you face yourself without needing the noise? Could you thrive where most men would crumble? That's why betrayal and rejection became part of your path. Not because you were meant to suffer, but because you were meant to see, to recognize that not everyone around you was meant to walk with you, that most people are weak, disloyal, and afraid of those who don't need them. Your isolation forced you to shed illusions about who was truly in your corner. It exposed the false, the shallow, and the weak. And once you saw that, you could never unsee it. Most men spend their whole lives avoiding loneliness, never realizing that true strength is born from it. Because once you've mastered being alone, once you've built yourself without the need for approval, you become untouchable. No rejection can shake you. No loss can break you. No absence can weaken you. So don't mourn the isolation. Embrace it. It wasn't a punishment. It was the process of turning you into something unstoppable. Number 7. Modern women were designed as distractions to keep you from power. Modern women are not the problem. The system that weaponized them is. The world doesn't need strong men anymore. It needs obedient workers. And what better way to weaken a man than to distract him with the one thing that has controlled empires, destroyed kings, and derailed legends? Women. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when women complemented powerful men, when they understood their role in supporting, not hindering, greatness. But over time, the system saw an opportunity to shift the balance, to make women prioritize their own indulgence over loyalty, to turn relationships into power struggles instead of partnerships. And once that happened, men were no longer building, they were chasing. Look around. How many men have fallen, not because they lacked intelligence, strength, or ambition, but because they were too consumed with proving their worth to a woman? How many men have delayed their purpose, compromised their principles, or given up their edge just to maintain a relationship that did nothing but drain them? Too many. And the system counts on that. They push a culture that tells men their value is in how many women they can attract, how much attention they can gain. They make men believe that relationships, marriage, and constant romantic validation are the goals. Not power, not mastery, not independence. And while men chase, they neglect. They neglect their mission. They neglect their self-discipline. They neglect their ability to walk away from anything that doesn't serve them. The strongest men in history didn't waste time on distractions. They knew the cost of chasing approval, the price of emotional entanglement. It's not about rejecting women, it's about refusing to be owned by them. A woman should be an asset, not an obstacle, a complement, not a burden. But in a world where weak men outnumber strong ones, women no longer need to align with power. They are rewarded for rebelling against it. A man chosen for greatness cannot afford to be entangled. The moment you stop chasing, stop justifying, stop needing, that is the moment you regain control. Because power was never meant to be begged for. It was meant to be taken. Number 8, not every battle is fought with fists. Some are fought in boardrooms and silence. The strongest men in history weren't the ones who could throw the hardest punch. They were the ones who could outthink their enemies before a punch was ever needed. The world glorifies brute strength, making men believe that dominance is about physical power. But the truth? The most dangerous men, the ones who shape empires and bend reality to their will, rarely need to lift a finger. They win before the fight even begins. Look at the men who have ruled nations, controlled industries, and built legacies that outlived them. They didn't waste energy fighting battles that could be won with a single move on the chessboard. They understood that real power isn't about proving how tough you are, it's about making sure you never have to. Because the man who controls the board controls everything. Weak men react. Strong men strategize. The difference between a pawn and a king is foresight, the ability to see 10 moves ahead while others are still stuck in the moment. The system wants you impulsive, emotional, easy to provoke. They want you fighting the wrong battles, getting caught in distractions, wasting energy on petty conflicts while the real game is being played behind closed doors. Boardrooms, negotiations, silence, these are the weapons of truly powerful men. They don't bark orders, they don't seek attention, and they don't waste time fighting battles that don't serve them. They manipulate the battlefield itself so that by the time their enemies realize what's happening, the war is already over. This is the mindset of a chosen one. You must understand that power isn't about proving yourself to people who don't matter. It's about moving in a way that forces the world to acknowledge you without a single word. The strongest men don't swing first, they don't have to, because by the time you think about challenging them, they've already won. Number 9. They will try to break you with soft living, but hard men rule the world. They don't need to chain you, they don't need to beat you into submission, they just need to make you comfortable. That's the new warfare. They don't break men with force anymore, they break them with softness, with convenience, with an easy life that robs them of their edge before they even realize it's gone. Look around, everything is designed to make you weaker. Fast food so you never learn to cook. Social media so you never develop real connections. Pornography so you never pursue real women. Video games so you never seek real victories. They flood you with instant gratification, making sure you're always entertained, always consuming, always too distracted to notice that your fire is dying. Because once a man stops chasing excellence and starts chasing comfort, he's already lost. A softened man will never stand against the system. He won't fight back, he won't challenge authority, he won't seek power because power requires struggle. And struggle is the one thing he's been trained to avoid at all costs. He will complain, he will whine, he will blame, but he will never act. And that's exactly what they want. Hard men rule the world because they are the only ones willing to endure. They embrace discomfort, push past pain, and build themselves through hardship. While the weak indulge, they sharpen their minds, strengthen their bodies, and master their emotions. They understand that real power isn't found in convenience, it's forged in discipline. This is why the modern world is obsessed with making you soft, because a hard man, a man who has trained himself to withstand suffering, is unbreakable. He cannot be bribed with cheap pleasures. He cannot be controlled through fear. He cannot be manipulated by the promise of an easy life. And when men like that rise, they don't just survive, they take over. So ask yourself, are you being softened? Are you indulging in the same distractions they feed the masses, or are you making yourself into something they can't control? Because in the end, only one type of man will rule, and it won't be the one who chose comfort over power. Number 10. A man's true power lies in his ability to walk away from everything. The most dangerous man in any room is the one who needs nothing. No approval, no validation, no attachment. That's the man who cannot be controlled because there is no leverage against him. When you have the ability to walk away from anything, a job, a deal, a relationship, even a lifetime of work, you become untouchable. Most men are slaves, not because they are physically restrained, but because they are emotionally owned. They stay in dead-end jobs because they fear uncertainty. They remain in toxic relationships because they fear loneliness. They tolerate disrespect because they fear loss. Fear is the chain that binds them, and the world knows it. That's why the system conditions men to attach, to comfort, to people, to possessions, because a man who is afraid to lose something will always be controlled by it. Look at history. The most powerful men, emperors, warlords, corporate kings, were men of detachment. They knew when to cut ties, when to burn bridges, when to move forward without hesitation. They didn't beg, they didn't chase, they didn't cling. They dictated the terms, and if the world didn't comply, they simply walked away. And in doing so, they forced the world to follow them. That's the secret. The moment you show you can walk away, the dynamic shifts. People respect a man they can't manipulate. Women are drawn to a man they can't own. The system fears a man who doesn't need it, because if you aren't afraid to leave, you can never be caged. But detachment isn't about running. It's about control. It means you own your emotions, your desires, your decisions. It means you choose power over comfort, self-respect over attachment. It means you refuse to kneel for anyone or anything. And once you master that, the world bends to you, because while others are desperate to hold on, you stand as the one man who never has to. Number 11. They want you to chase status, but real power is in remaining unknown. The world tricks men into chasing status, thinking power comes from visibility. Flashy cars, expensive suits, loud voices, and desperate displays of wealth. This is what they tell you power looks like, but the truth? Real power is never seen, only felt. The men who rule don't stand in the spotlight. They pull the strings from the shadows. Society rewards peacocks, men who seek attention, who crave validation, who need others to recognize their greatness. But peacocks get eaten first. The moment you expose your hand, you become a target. Enemies see your moves, competitors study your weaknesses, and the system finds ways to bring you down. The loudest man in the room isn't the most powerful, he's just the easiest to hit. The real chosen ones understand this. They build quietly. They move without announcing. They grow in ways the world doesn't notice until it's too late. They don't seek applause because they know applause is a distraction. While others chase clout, they're securing leverage. While others beg for recognition, they're controlling the game without anyone realizing it. Look at history. The most powerful men weren't the ones constantly proving their status. They were the ones everyone suspected, but could never confirm. The hidden financiers funding wars, the silent partners controlling industries, the minds behind governments whose names never make the headlines. These men knew a fundamental truth. If they can't see you, they can't stop you. That's why the system pushes men to flex, to show off, to broadcast their wins. Because the moment you step into the spotlight, you become predictable, you become controllable, and most importantly, you become replaceable. They want you chasing status because it keeps you distracted from what actually matters. Control. So while others scream for attention, choose silence. While they compete for titles, build unseen. Let them think you're ordinary while you stack power they'll never see coming, because the man who needs recognition will always be beneath the man who doesn't. And in the end, kings who move in silence never have to fight for their throne. Number 12. You weren't chosen to join. You were chosen to lead. Most men spend their lives looking for a place to belong. They seek acceptance, a tribe, a brotherhood that will validate them. But you weren't chosen to join anything. You were chosen because you don't need to. The world doesn't select followers. It selects men who will command their own legions. The system is built for the weak, for those who need guidance, approval, and leadership to function. But the men who shift history, who carve their names into time itself, never ask where they fit in. They don't chase belonging because they are the foundation others gather around. That's the difference between those who were chosen and those who weren't. The weak seek community, but the strong build empires. This is why you've always felt different. The world tried to fit you into its mold, to make you follow its rules, to condition you to seek validation from the masses. But that never sat right with you, did it? You never needed a leader because deep down you are one. While others waited for permission, you moved. While others asked what to do, you figured it out yourself, and that's why they chose you. But understand this, leadership isn't about power trips or ego. It's about control. Control over yourself, your mind, your destiny. Most men lack that control, which is why they will always be led by someone else. They need a purpose assigned to them. You create your own. That's what separates the rulers from the ruled. This isn't about joining some secret club, some elite society that will hand you power. You are the power. And the moment you realize that, the moment you stop seeking permission and start owning your path, everything changes. The world doesn't reward men who wait to be chosen. It rewards those who step forward and claim what's already theirs. And you weren't born to follow. You were born to command. Number 13, they fear you because you cannot be controlled. And that is the ultimate power. The world runs on control. Governments control through laws, corporations control through money, and weak people control through guilt and manipulation. Every system in place is designed to make sure the average man stays obedient, chasing approval, and too afraid to step out of line. But when a man exists outside of that control, when he cannot be bought, threatened, or emotionally swayed, he becomes the most dangerous force on earth. That's why they fear you, not because of your strength, not because of your knowledge, but because you won't bend. They can't dangle money in front of you and expect you to compromise. They can't use fear to keep you in check. They can't manipulate you through the one thing that weakens most men, women. And that makes you unpredictable. It makes you untouchable. It makes you a problem for a world that thrives on keeping men in line. Look at the men who have shaken history. The revolutionaries, the outlaws, the self-made kings. They weren't controlled by systems. They broke them. They understood that power doesn't come from obeying. It comes from mastering yourself so completely that nothing external can move you. No bribe, no threat, no false sense of belonging. A man like that, he doesn't ask for permission. He takes what is his. This is why they will try to discredit you. They will label you difficult, dangerous, even insane, because a man who cannot be controlled is a man who cannot be used. And a system that relies on obedient workers, distracted men, and fearful followers cannot afford too many men like you walking around, proving that freedom is possible. The ultimate power isn't in wealth, fame, or status. It's in being untouchable. When nothing owns you, you own everything, and that is why they fear you, because you are proof that their system is nothing more than an illusion. And once enough men wake up to that fact, the game is over. Number 14, most will fall before they ever awaken, but you were chosen because you survived. Most men will never wake up. They will live and die as pawns trapped in a cycle of distraction, fear, and weakness. They will sell their potential for comfort, trade their power for approval, and kneel before a system that never saw them as anything more than disposable. The world is designed to break men before they ever realize who they are, and most will fall. But you're still here, and that means something. You weren't chosen because of luck. You weren't chosen because of chance. You were chosen because despite everything thrown at you, betrayals, isolation, failures, temptations, you didn't break. You saw the traps, the distractions, the illusions for what they were, and you refused to be another casualty. That alone separates you from the masses. That alone makes you dangerous. Weak men fold at the first sign of resistance. They complain about unfairness, cry about hardship, and accept their fate as if they never had a choice. Fools waste their energy chasing what doesn't matter, status, fleeting pleasures, the approval of people who don't respect them. And cowards, they bow before the system, hoping obedience will grant them peace, not realizing submission only leads to more chains. But you kept moving, you endured, and that is the mark of the chosen. The difference between those who rule and those who are ruled isn't intelligence, connections, or even talent. It's resilience. It's the ability to take pain, loss, loneliness, and failure and use it as fuel instead of an excuse. It's the refusal to quit when everything around you is telling you to give up. That is why you are still standing. That is why you were chosen. Most men are asleep and they will never wake up. They will never realize they were meant for more. They will never step into their full strength because they were broken before they ever had the chance. But you survived what was meant to destroy you. And that means you were never meant to be like them. You were meant to rise. Power isn't given, it's taken. And the men who take it aren't the ones waiting for permission, seeking validation, or begging to belong. They are the ones who decide, the ones who endure, the ones who refuse to be controlled. You were never meant to be ordinary. The distractions, the betrayals, the hardships, they weren't punishments, they were tests. Tests to see if you would fold like the rest, or if you would rise above the illusions designed to keep you weak. The world tried to break you, but you're still here, and that alone proves what you are. Most men will never awaken. They will chase approval, drown in distractions, and die as pawns in a game they never even realized they were playing. But you see the board. You understand the game, and that makes you unstoppable. This isn't about joining something, it's about becoming something. A force that cannot be manipulated, a man who cannot be moved, a presence that commands without speaking. That is the ultimate power. Not wealth, not fame, not status, but the ability to walk away from anything, to remain untouchable, to rule in silence while others chase shadows. You weren't chosen because you needed saving, you were chosen because you never did. And now the only question left is this: will you step into what you were meant to be, or will you let the world tame you like it tamed the rest? The choice has always been yours. But if you truly are one of the chosen, you already know there was never a choice to begin with, only destiny. And it's waiting for you to claim it. If this message resonated with you, if something deep inside you knows you were meant for more, then this is just the beginning. The world is designed to keep men like you asleep, but here we awaken. So if you're ready to step into your power, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Don't just watch, commit. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, and let me know, you in, or are you falling back with the masses? And if you know another man who needs to hear this, share this with him. Because real power isn't just about rising alone, it's about building a legion. The weak will scroll past, the chosen will take action. Which one are you?